Hello, 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 hello. Tuesday at 1 o'clock. I'm here. Are you here? I don't know who's here, but I am. And it's a nice day today. It is the first day back at work for me after Holy Week, which is always kind of a finish line for pastors, or at least for me. Easter is kind of the day you circle on the calendar to say, if I can just get through that, and then we can reassess what we're going to do heading into summer. And especially this year, because there's so much on Palm Sunday as well with business meetings and votes and such. So, yes, Easter was definitely a finish line for me, and it was a great Sunday. Should probably talk a little bit about Good Friday as well, since that happened since we last chatted. Yeah, a lot has gone on since last Tuesday, and most of it good. Most of it has been good. So I thought Good Friday was one of the better services I've been a part of in a long, long time. I have to say it's totally intuition. It's totally intuitive. There's no real data to back this up. But as somebody who's on stage pretty regularly, I can definitely tell the difference between low energy in the room and high energy in the room, low participation in the room and high participation in the room. And something about Good Friday, when you know you're coming to hear that story and you know you're coming to sing songs about the cross, you don't have to be clever. From my perspective, planning a service like that, the goal is not to be tricky or clever. The goal is to just, hey, it's in front of everybody. It's what we're coming to. We all expect as we're coming into the room. And I don't know if it's just the acoustic style of that service or the dimmer lights or just people's hearts were ready. And just phenomenal corporate worship that night. Just, oh, so good. And then Easter was great, especially compared to last Easter when it was COVID crazy. It was great to see new faces, new people visiting, to see some people returning for the first time because it was Easter, because of vaccine. Man, it was nice to see a full house at both services. And one of the things we did, I don't know if you noticed, if you were here, we had the chairs in the sanctuary positioned with the spacing for the last 3-4 months, which meant it was maybe 2/3 of the number of chairs that we had bought to put in that room. And what ended up happening was, in the days leading up to it, with Matt leaving, he knew in his mind, this is how I want the chairs oriented in that room. He was kind of the mastermind behind a lot of that. And so we're like, well, you should put them where they should go before you leave, since no one else really knows your design on this. And because it's Easter, we may need the extra seats. So that was the first time that sanctuary was full since we put the new carpet in terms of chairs. And then to see how many people were actually there, filling that many chairs, was really great. So it wasn't standing room only. We didn't break any fire codes or anything like that. It was still, though, very good to feel that momentum and to see those people. And I got a good email with some questions from Miriam about the message itself and some questions about some of the details. So I want to get to that today as well. And if you have questions, you want to chime in here on the live chat, I will answer them as they come. But Easter Sunday message. Well, actually, let's go back to Good Friday message. Let's start there. Good Friday, again, I'm not trying to be clever on either of these services. It is what it is. You're talking about the cross and you're talking about the empty tomb. And I think the more clever a pastor tries to get, the harder it becomes, or the less meaningful it can be for people who are expecting something. Hey, Jacob, nice to see you. And so for Good Friday, the challenge is, unless you also do a Maundy Thursday, there's so much content about Passion Week to get into one service. Do you do Gethsemane? Do you do the foot washing? Do you do the Last Supper? Do you do the Barabbas piece of the story? Do you do the high priestly prayer from John? Or do you just do the cross? And if you do the cross, do you do the Matthew version of the cross or the Mark version? All those kind of questions when you're preparing something like that. What I love about our Good Friday service, and we do this Christmas Eve as well, is what I call Big Mac services. In that, normal Sunday services, our liturgy is a couple songs, prayer, sermon, couple songs. For Good Friday and Christmas Eve, we do the Big Mac service, which is songs, part of a message, songs, part of a message, songs. So kind of like the bun, meat, bun, meat, bun. And it means as a preacher, I have to compress my thoughts into smaller pieces. I can't ramble for 35 minutes or 40 minutes or 45 minutes some weeks. I'm trying to keep it into 10 to 15-minute sections. And I actually love that challenge. I would be open to maybe doing a Big Mac service on a Sunday. I really enjoy having to crystallize what I want to say and into a simple idea. And then the second one can be somewhat different. And so what I did for Good Friday was we did Gethsemane and then we did the cross. And that was my way to get 2 of the Passion Week stories into one service. Because I just felt like Gethsemane is so key to the Good Friday story of what Jesus had on his mind. And I just love that concept of if Jesus didn't abandon us in Gethsemane, he'll never abandon us, because that was the chance. And that was when he felt it the most strongly. And so I wanted to cover that, but then also definitely need to cover the cross and the last words of Jesus. As I said in the service, is so much has been written, so much is done. Stations of the Cross, the 7 last words of Jesus, those types of things. That's enough to fill a whole preaching series, let alone 10 minutes on Good Friday. But I wanted to cover those as well. So that's what went into it. And then in picking the songs and arranging the songs, it wasn't there wasn't really a science to it. I went through our catalog of songs, and on my legal pad here, I wrote down all the ones that were about the cross. And hi, Jacob, checking in. You want my shirt again? U.S. Air Force. Yeah. I wrote down all the songs that had to do with the cross primarily, which there's a lot of them. There's way more songs about the cross than about the empty tomb, although current songwriters are getting back to fixing that and making sure that the last verse is about the resurrection or the return of Christ. All the great hymns had that pattern. So some of those are coming back. But anyway, so I listed all the ones with the cross, and I had, at the end of it, I thought, okay, what are the 8 or 9 I definitely want to do, and how do I arrange them? And so that's what we did. I know a lot more thought goes into what our music leaders do. Generally, they try and match it with the text every week on a Sunday. So I need to know what sermons we're going to be doing in Luke ahead of time so they can match that as best they can. But for Good Friday, it was like, we're talking about the cross. We're going to sing about the cross. And it was amazing. That's pretty much all that people need, just the gospel. And let's sing about the cross. And man, it was good. It was a good time. But one of the things I want to talk about today, I'll get to the Easter message in a minute, is the peek behind the curtain, this kind of confessional that I get to do here on Tuesdays and show you how the sausage gets made. Something happened on Friday and happened on Sunday that I thought is worth talking about. And that is weird musical problems. I was a music pastor before I got to be a preaching pastor. I still sit in with the band all the time. I love those opportunities to lead the congregation musically like I did on Good Friday. And one of the things we talk about is there will always be curveballs in a worship service. There will always be something you can't predict that's going to happen. Maybe the slides don't come on, like happened on Good Friday. The computer was on, the cameras were on, the program that runs the slides was on, but it wasn't doing it correctly, overlapping the video. So as I started the first song on Friday, there were no slides. And I got a couple of measures into it, and I realized they're not going to be able to fix that while I'm doing this. So we better stop. And in case you don't know, what goes on in the tech booth, in the sound booth back there, amazing work. The amount of thought and on-the-spot genius that has to happen by Tanya and Kirsten and Tim and Mark and Melody and all the people that are back there, all the Marleys that help out. It's phenomenal that we have what we have in terms of tech on any given day, on any given week. But there's so many possible failure points between the cameras and the computer and the soundboard and this microphone and that cable. And the expectation that we will get through a service without one of those things failing is not a realistic expectation. So we talk a lot about you got to be ready to hit the curveballs. If you want to be in the major leagues, you got to hit the curveballs. I'm not sure we're the majors. Let's say high A ball. If you need to be in double A ball, you still got to learn how to hit curveballs. And we had some curveballs this week. We had the slide thing at the beginning on Friday, and it turned out great because I just got to read the passage early, and Joe was able to go back and they were able to reboot what they needed to reboot. But the other trick was, I talked to Tanya about it this morning, they were streaming it to YouTube, and so they couldn't reboot the whole computer or it would have killed the YouTube feed. So how do you fix that piece of software that's on the computer that probably needs a whole reboot, but you can't reboot the whole computer? And they're trying to do this while everyone in the room is waiting for words to show up on the screen. Awesome work by those guys. Awesome work. And so we were able to do that, and it was fine. And then the last song of the set on Good Friday, You Are My King, I was starting to play it, and I noticed Joe was playing it in a totally different key. And I kind of leaned over. I'm like, what key are you playing this in? He's like, C. And I'm like, it's not in C, it's in E. He's like, oh, okay. And he transitioned to E. And that happens. That happens in every band that I've ever been in. That happens live. It happens in rehearsals. You're like, what can you do? You enjoy it. You ride it out. It's fun. You smile about it. You let everyone in the room know this kind of happens sometimes. And then on Sunday, we had a situation where Carl and Rebecca, who are awesome, husband-wife team leading us in music first week of every month, they rehearse like crazy. Carl has it down. Probably the hardest working rehearsal team we have. And that's not a slight at Edward or Quentin or anyone else who leads. It's just they take this really seriously. And my wife, Abby, is on that team, the first week team. And so she was like, yeah, everything was great at rehearsal. Well, we get to the start of Easter Sunday morning, the one that's going out to the whole world on the internet. And what happened happens to every musician and every music leader I've ever known. You get music vapor lock. And there's no, why it happens, you don't know. Why am I playing this in the wrong time signature? I know how this song goes. Why am I playing it in 6 instead of 4? Wait a minute. It's supposed to be in E. Why am I playing it in D? I don't know. My brain went into vapor lock. I led worship one time on an Easter Sunday, and I was supposed to count in the band to start the service. And I was leading from bass guitar, which is usually a no-no, and this is one of the reasons why. So this is probably 1996, 1997. I was leading worship for a room full of 600 to 700 people on Easter Sunday morning. First thing of the service, we have this really complicated song called Morning Into Dancing by Tommy Walker, and it has this Caribbean riff, this Caribbean instrumental passage at the beginning. Abby's got the flute ready to go. I turn to count in the band, and instead of going 1, 2, 3, 4, do 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 do, I turn to the drummer and I go 1, and then I turn back to the crowd, to the congregation. Nobody knows where 1 is because I didn't count 4. I start playing, and it was about a 20-second fretless bass solo to start Easter, and nobody knew when to come in or how to come in, and we were all supposed to come in together, and I messed it all up. And it was, if there was not just a train wreck, this was like super train going the speed of sound and another super train going the speed of sound, and they all hit the bridge at the same time. And then Alec Guinness in Bridge on the River Kwai hit the TNT and the bridge collapsed and both trains went down. That's what it was like for me in 1996, 97. And I've never forgotten it because it happens. You get vapor lock. I don't know why I did that. Why did I do that? That doesn't make any sense. There have been times I'm leading my own song that I wrote that the whole church knows, and I can't remember how it goes. Where's that melody line? That happened to me on Friday. We were doing Man of Sorrows, which is a great song. I know it inside and out. And I'm playing it, and I get to the chorus, and I don't know what the melody is. I have no idea. How does the chorus start? And in that moment, I just had vapor lock. So I backed away from the microphone, and people in the room didn't know, are we actually singing the chorus? Because Jeff's not singing it. But I needed the room to sing it so that I would remember how it goes. It happens. Well, it happened on Easter Sunday to the crosses, and I don't know what happened, if it was an intro to a particular song that wasn't getting played, and Carl did a phenomenal job of hitting that curveball. And it was nobody's fault. It's not a matter of blame because it just happens. and you get stuck, and you know everybody's waiting for you to do the thing that you're supposed to do, and you're like, my brain won't find it. I remember I did "'Tis So Sweet to Trust in Jesus," and this was a couple years ago, and we were just coming off a song that was in a different time signature. It was in 6/8, which is a different kind of strumming pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Dung 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 dung. And then we got into "'Tis So Sweet to Trust in Jesus," which is in 4. 'Tis so sweet to trust, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I couldn't find it. I'm strumming in 6. Totally different rhythm. And when you do that, it makes the verses a little slower, but you can still kind of find your way through the melody. But I remember I was up there, and Julie Magalong, who's our church administrator right now, and Jenny Goodrich were both singing that day. And they looked at me as I started the song with the whole congregation. And I looked over at them, and they were like, "What are you doing? What are you doing? How do you recover from that?" And of course, when you get to the chorus, you realize you can't recover from that, because however the verses might work, the chorus won't. And it was just a disaster. Vapor lock. It happens. Anyway, that's what happened on Easter Sunday, and I loved it. I got to tell you, I loved that it happened. I'm not sadistic. I'm not here like, oh, I love that they had to suffer through that. Those people who work so hard. Like, no, I'm not happy that it was a very awkward scenario for Carl and Rebecca and the rest of the team. That's not what I love. What I love is that it happened, because it communicates something so important to the church and even to the world watching on YouTube. And that is, we are a family. We are not trying to be professionals. Our goal is not perfection in our production. Our goal is real people worshiping God. Our goal is that we are normal people who take the Bible seriously, that we are casual people, but we're passionate about the things of God. And so if you're ever in a service and the musician gets vapor lock, or even if you're like at a concert, whenever they do concerts again, show extra mercy, because having been in that situation, I can tell you there's no explanation for it. It just happens. And I thought they recovered great. And it goes back to something else we were talking about here in our staff meetings the last couple of weeks, and that's the sanctity of the sanctuary. I don't know if you've ever had these conversations. Is the sanctuary a sacred place, or is it just another room? And I'm of the opinion that people are way more important than stuff. People are way more important than the room. And you, as a follower of Jesus, are the temple. You don't go to a building because that's where God lives, or you have to treat it with this huge respect because this is where the presence of God manifests. Like, no, you are the temple. You should be treating yourself with that level of respect, and other people who bear the image of God and potentially who have his spirit. The people are the temple, not the place. And I think that was a key part of Jesus' ministry. I'm not saying we should be disrespectful of the property. I tend to dress moderately professional when I preach, because I take the pulpit seriously. I don't want to be flippant when I'm preaching. And I feel like if I wore shorts and flip-flops, I probably would be more flippant, just in my own heart, my own mind. But I'm convinced that the room is just a room. There's no baked in holiness to the room. And in fact, that was what I tried to encourage the crosses with between services. I just said, guys, that was perfect. Because what this room is our living room. It's not a production studio. For as great as our tech people do in creating what we do for YouTube and stuff, that room, I call it the octagon because it's shaped like an octagon, like Ultimate Fight Club. I'm going into the octagon today. But it's our living room. It's the family's space to do family things. And one of the things we do as a family is we worship Jesus together. And I love that tone happens. And it got reinforced. It gets reinforced when I forget how the chorus starts. It gets reinforced when I forget what time signature I'm playing. It gets reinforced when the microphone isn't turned on, or when it's turned on, it feeds back because it's too loud. Those things do not bother me at all, because the end goal is not crisp perfection. The end goal is a family doing family stuff. And so thank you to everybody who was here that rolled with that curveball. And I don't think it disrupted anything. I think it actually set a really good tone of, hey, we're going to have fun today, and we're going to make mistakes today because we're normal people. So thank you to the Crosses and to that music team and everybody who was here. I'm seeing some conversations here on the chat. Jacob, watching out there from Munichi. Grace Latino is checking in. That's Pastor Ali, usually under the Grace Latino name. But yeah, we share this. We have to be a family together. So that's what we're about. So Easter, and I want to get to Miriam's questions. Again, like Good Friday, I thought I'm going to aim right down the middle here. We're just going to do the resurrection story. And I picked Matthew to do the resurrection story because I intend to do Luke's resurrection story eventually here as we go through Luke. And Matthew has enough detail, but not a lot of the side stories. And that's one of the things when you're talking about the resurrection. The 4 versions of the resurrection in the 4 Gospels cover different things. And actually, to make a timeline of resurrection appearances Jesus made gets really knotted and guesswork. So when he met with Thomas in the locked room and the 12 or the 11, was that in Jerusalem or was that in Galilee? Was that before they met him in Galilee? What about the disciples on the road to Emmaus? When did that happen? He saw Mary Magdalene in the garden. She thought he was the gardener. That's John's version of the events. That doesn't happen in Matthew. Peter and John are at the tomb, but not in Matthew's version. What parts of those stories do you tell? And I thought, I'm just going to stay in Matthew. We're going to do Matthew's version of the events. And I think they're Matthew's version of the events because that was his experience. Matthew's was one of the 11. And so he's saying, this is what happened. This is how I experienced the resurrection, which was I saw Jesus in Galilee because Mary and Mary told me to go to Galilee to see him. And so he probably got the story of what happened at the tomb from the Marys. And what he heard from them was, yeah, there was an angel who talked to us and the guards were scared. The story about the chief priest paying off the guards probably came through somebody who was in that circle who became a believer later. So I thought, let's just stick with that. So we're not going to cover every detail of what happened post-resurrection. We're not going to talk about, was there one angel or 2 angels? Were Peter and John there with Mary or did they come later? Like all that stuff, we're not going to deal with it. We're just going to say what Matthew said. And that's what we did. And I thought that was a good way through all that. Miriam had some questions about the content. Let's see. They went to the mountain in Galilee, which Jesus had directed them in Matthew 28. How did Jesus direct them? Curious if this is a mountain where they often gathered. Did Jesus say, after my death, let's meet here? There might have been a detail in what he told the Marys that Matthew just didn't record, that they passed on to them. We know in John's gospel, he was on the beach of the Sea of Galilee while they were fishing, and Peter saw him and jumped out of the boat and swam to meet him, and that's the reinstatement stuff at the end of the book of John. So I think, yeah, I mean, Peter had a house in Capernaum, which is on the Sea of Galilee. That was kind of their home base for those years and months that Jesus ministered around there. So I definitely think they had their normal hangout places. The Sermon on the Mount was right outside of Capernaum. So yeah, chances are they were on the west side of the Sea of Galilee because the east side was called the Decapolis, which was Gentile territory. So they were on the west side of the Sea of Galilee, probably 10, 11 o'clock, if you look at it like a face. And I would guess that they just knew to meet him on that particular plain or mountain. It's tough to say mountain when you live in Colorado because those aren't the mountains that are around the Sea of Galilee. They're more hillsides. But yeah, I think they knew where to meet him because they had been there with him so many times. Matthew 20:18, teaching them to observe. Is observing noticing what the disciples are doing or observing following the example like we observe communion? So Jesus says, teaching them to observe all I've commanded. What does that observe mean? Some translations say obey. So I think the implication of that command is to not just watch what the disciples do. Don't just teach them to watch or teach them what you saw me do. No, it's teach them to participate in the commandments. Teach them to obey after they've been baptized. So it's part and parcel of the discipleship process. The baptizing means that they now believe, and then the training to not behave. That sounds like it's moralism. It's not. To obey. So I think that's how I would answer that question. Yeah, more comments about I joked that when Jesus says greetings to the women, that's such a formal way of saying what he probably really said, which was, hey, it's me. Like, be happy, be super happy. Look, I'm back. Greetings sounds so like, ooh, yes, sir. Greetings. Of course, you would fall at his feet in worship because so there is still a yes, sir thing, but his heart was full of joy at seeing them, and their heart was full of fear and great joy. And so I think the greetings there was like that. Does that mean that every time that word gets used in scripture, it means that level of be happy? I'm not sure. Sometimes I think it is just like an idiom of saying, hey, howdy, how are you? Greetings, hi, que pasa, buenos dias, whatever it is, like, hi, hola. But I think in that context, it was certainly happier. But yeah, sometimes those idioms in other languages don't translate as excitedly or joyfully as we can get sometimes. Like, I loved being able to point out Matthew's favorite word, behold, which really means, hey, check this out. We've been studying Romans on Wednesday nights, and a phrase that shows up in Romans quite a bit is, may it never be. Should we go on sinning so that grace may increase? May it never be. Does this mean this? Well, no, not may it never be. Like that, Paul uses that as an answer to a rhetorical question quite a bit in Romans. And may it never be, it's not a great translation. It really means, no way. Are you kidding? Like that's the force. So as we've been going through Romans, that's kind of how we translated it, studying it. Like, really? Are you kidding? It's one of those shorthand phrases that we just don't know how to translate very well from one language to another. So yeah, so some of those things, what went through my head, I like to share this with Easter stuff. We had we joked around here with all the pastors when there were 6 of us. If you can't preach Easter or Christmas cold, you probably should get out of the business. Like those are if somebody woke you up at 2 a.m. and handed you a microphone and said you have to preach about the empty tomb, you should be ready to do that if you're a pastor. And so I like these down the middle messages sometimes because I don't feel like I have to trick anybody. I just get to preach on the empty tomb, and that's thrilling. And so I didn't overthink it. I didn't try to be extra impressive. It's just like, no, it's Matthew 28. We're just going to read it and we're going to talk about it. And that was quite freeing. I was kind of free of anxiety and let the passage be. That's what expository preaching is anyways. You let the passage drive your outline. But in this case, it was kind of like, I had notes, but there was a feeling of like, do I really need notes? I'm talking about the empty tomb. I should be able to do this 24/7. And so that was fun to kind of get up there and just think, okay, where do we want to go with this? And if I did it again this week, which I always try to preach the gospel in every message I do, but if I had Matthew 28 to do again this week, it would be very similar, but it wouldn't be identical because I tried not to overwrite it. I tried not to make it too intensive. So it's just what it is. It's the empty tomb. And got a lot of good feedback on it. Both services. Again, it's the greatest story ever told. So I think that was the only thing I brought to it was let's talk about how stories are told and why they're great and why this resurrection story gives us that confidence of a good final act in our individual lives, but then also in the world at large. Because there are days where you kind of feel like I talked about the acts and how Act 2 is supposed to be depressing and lead people to wonder, how in the world are we going to get out of this? Another great line of dialogue in The Lord of the Rings is about that. Like, as Sam and Frodo are talking about all the great stories, you don't know how the good guys are going to make it out alive. And Sam, in that moment, he's like, this is our story, and we just happen to be there in the story right now. But it'll work out because that's what Act 3 is for. That's what happens. And so I think when I get really depressed about the state of the world today and cancel culture and a lack of rational thinking and a lack of compassion and a lack of forgiveness and a lack of understanding where other people are coming from, or even have willing dialogue to disagree agreeably, like that just breaks my heart, and it makes me worry for my kids and the future generations and even the second half of my life in ministry. What's that going to be like if the world is just going crazy like they are right now? But the resurrection to me is no. There's an Act 3. There is a way through this. There is redemptive power in the gospel. And no matter how much the world breaks, Jesus will put it back together. I don't know when, and I'm not sure how, but the resurrection is a story of hope that there is something better. And I can be an agent of the resurrection because I'm a new creation. And I get to do that in a broken, fallen world. I'm already past, I'm at 31 minutes, but I have one more thing I want to say, and it's along this idea. Maybe 10 years ago, and maybe still is in your world, I don't know, there was a big controversy about Easter. Can you call it Easter? Easter is a pagan ritual. We're talking about the resurrection. Maybe we should call it something different. And this happens with Christmas as well. Jesus wasn't born in December, probably. So what happened is Christians co-opted a winter festival and then made it about Jesus. And I love that those things happened. I love that Christians co-opted a pagan thing and then made it about Jesus. I love it. I'm not embarrassed to call it Easter. That's what the world thinks of when they think of Easter now. Most people don't think of it as a pagan thing anymore. They think of it, oh yeah, that's when Christians celebrate the resurrection of Jesus. I love that Christians have taken these pagan things and then made them about Jesus. That's the point of redeeming the world. That's the point of the kingdom of God coming and overlapping the kingdom of this world. It's as small as a mustard seed, but it grows up into a tree, and all the birds can make nests in the branches. The kingdom of God is about the birth, life, death, resurrection of Jesus. So we took what the world had, not we personally, but over the church history, and made those things to be more about Jesus. Isn't that what redeeming is supposed to do? Is to take the things of this world and say, it's not really about that. It's really about the kingdom of God. And this is what happened Passover week. And so to me, it's like, I'm proud that it's Easter. That's like we've taken something pagan and we've made it kingdom of God-ish. That's the point. And so and of course I was born on Easter Sunday, so it's always been a special thing for me. But that's one of those things that the goal of the church is to live out the resurrection power of new creation beings to bring the kingdom of God to bear in the kingdom of this world. And if that means we take what they've celebrated and make it now what we celebrate, isn't that the point? And so I'm excited for that. And I thought that was the key part of the message for my heart this week was, if the world's breaking around me, I am still a new creation and I can still contribute something redemptive to this world. And if that means I get in trouble for that, that means I get in trouble for that. But it makes me want to do it more. Not despair because the world is in Act 2, but bring hope because I know there's an Act 3. And that's kind of the idea I was trying to get at in the sermon. So hopefully this was beneficial to you, to kind of follow through on my thinking and to be merciful to the people who lead us in music, because it is a very hard job. And people have a lot of expectations about music, and if you don't meet them, they will let you hear it. And I just love that our sanctuary is a living room for the family of God. So that's, I guess, church philosophy, practicality of writing sermons, what it's like to be under the spotlight when the slides don't work, and just so grateful for all the people that are part of this family, that are willing to go up and play guitar and piano, that are willing to go into the sound booth and learn all that stuff so that we can do what we do. Those guys are awesome. And the next time you see any of those volunteers, give them a big hug, COVID friendly. But yeah, just love on them, because it's a lot of work, and being in front of people is terrifying for most people. And so when you're in front of people and the curveball comes, even more impressive. So I had a great weekend. This coming Sunday, we're back in Luke 17. We're going to be talking about not causing other people to sin and forgiving those who are sinning. And that'll be a good message there at the beginning of Luke 17. Back to normal business. So I will be back in front of a camera on Thursday. Send some emails or anything you want us to talk about here on these Tuesdays. Thank you, Miriam, for your email. Hopefully I answered some of those questions okay. And we'll be back next time. Thanks.